Well, it's happening. We're seeing the unraveling of the biggest Ponzi of all time. And this is, of course, with strategy and their preferred shares stretch as well as MSTR all going to zero. And this is all going to cause crypto, Bitcoin as well, to go to zero. And I've said for a long time, this is something that I've been monitoring for, and I've been positioning short on. And I think that this will be a generational short that you can use to profit massively off of. And this is something that I've been warning about over the past several months, if not the past year. Even in my last video, I discussed why Bitcoin is going to zero, particularly with stretch and how close Michael Saylor is flying to the sun, and why this STRC or stretch is, and the yield that they need to pay the dividends for all of these shareholders, and why this is negatively causing the flywheel of MicroStrategy to collapse. And I've been talking, for many, many months about how shorting crypto will be one of the greatest trades of all time alongside longing AI, even since the top in of course, October. But even earlier this year, I mentioned about how it's not too late to sell all of your crypto before it goes to zero. And it indeed remains the case. It's not too late to sell. There's so many better assets that I've been talking about over the past few months, including the generational AI trade, right? I've discussed how I went all in on the AI stocks, the semiconductors, and ever since then, they've all gone insane. SanDisk, Micron, Intel, all of these stocks up massive multiples ever since their all-time high breakouts. And crypto continues to go to zero. Bitcoin is hovering at the 60K level, and I believe if this breaches, this is going to be catastrophic. We might see a sort of capitulation event over the next few weeks. So I'm going to cover in this video kind of at the, go over what happened since the start, and how this was sort of unfolding and what recent developments have happened, as well as how I'm going to position for what I think will be a potentially generational short into this, and what I'm actually buying instead. So, of course, over the last few months, we had this sort of advertising on stretch, and this is, of course, this AI slop, and this was the first sign that you should get the fuck out of crypto. You should get the fuck out of MSTR, STRC. And as you guys know, as I covered in the last video, stretch is supposed to be pegged to $100. This is supposed to be a quote-unquote stable coin, which is used to generate 11.5% yield. And they advertised for this, and we'll watch it in a second, in this AI slop video.
Are you on vacation here?
I live here. I'm retired. I just don't think I'm meant to live an uncomfortable life.
Wow, how did you make it?
I worked hard as an engineer to save money. Again. Then I put my savings into Stretch.
What is Stretch?
Stretch is a stock. Right now I get about 11% a year in dividends. Nice.
Okay, so you guys get the point. She's saying that she put her savings into Stretch, and now she is down 25%, and she's supposed to get 11.5% yield, but instead she is literally down on her money. And this is what I never understand about yield. I think it's retarded to try to seek yield in any capacity. I've maintained this since, this for years, ever since I saw crypto staking, and I saw many, many forms of greed in the markets where people try to seek, a little more yield, 10% yield, 20% yield. Even, you guys saw what happened with Luna and UST, where people would promise 20% yield, and of course that all went to zero. And so I think this is the case because people don't understand asymmetry. And this is a key part of my trading system that I've talked about for years now, where I mentioned how I always look for asymmetries, whether it comes to trading, investing, in life in general. And what does this mean? Asymmetry basically means that I look for something that has defined downside, capped defined downside that is low, compared to the upside, which is supposed to be very high, multiples higher than the potential downside. And in this case, right, you're supposed to receive 11.5% yield, 10% yield, something of that sort. But what's your downside here? Your downside is literally minus 100%. So you have virtually unlimited downside, but very limited upside. And this is exactly what you don't want. Whenever you trade, you want to seek asymmetries where there is a setup that involves huge upside, virtually unlimited upside, or at least, if realistically speaking, 2 to 5 times the downside, right? And in this case, your downside is virtually infinite and your upside is capped. And so this is a very stupid idea to ever buy something like this, especially something that is attached to crypto, which, as we know, is on its way to zero. This has no catalyst left. I've talked about it ad nauseum in many, many other videos where I discussed why Bitcoin in particular is a terrible asset to put money into, and how you should be selling it and putting it into private markets, into AI stocks instead. And this continues to be the case, right? Bitcoin is collapsing at the moment. As you guys know, I've been shorting Bitcoin ever since the highs back in October up here, ever since we had that failed all-time high break. And I again shorted this time around 94K. I sort of broke down above this level right here when we failed to reclaim above 94.4K. And then ever since then, I also shorted down here as well. And this was as soon as Michael Saylor actually sold some of his Bitcoin. And this is a big deal, obviously, because Strategy was never intended to sell any Bitcoin. And this is actually something that's funny because Michael Saylor, he literally lied about this a while back when he was trying to convince everyone that he actually would never sell. So this was a clip, I think all the way back.
I promise not to sell the Bitcoin. I promise not to sell the Bitcoin. And so we're in the business of not selling Bitcoin. We got very good at it. We have a PhD in hodling, you know?
So this is something that he made during a MicroStrategy earnings call. And in the meantime, right, 2 years later, this is what he has to say now when they are on the precipice of doom and they basically have to sell Bitcoin in order to continue to prop up their stock price. And especially when they have to give the yield dividends to the rest of the people who are holding STRC.
Point is, I said to you, never sell your Bitcoin. I never said that the company wouldn't sell his Bitcoin. And anybody that's been listening to our earnings calls or reading our disclosures or has half a brain knows for the last 5 years, we've been very clear that of course we sell the Bitcoin if we have to, is to do it because...
So it's very clear that Saylor is a liar and that you should pretty much never trust anyone in this space, or anyone in general, to give you necessarily financial advice. Many of these people, Saylor included, are basically using you as the exit liquidity and have no real remorse or morals behind their actions. They're just doing whatever benefits them the most. At the end of the day, everyone who you think is your idol is not. Everyone who has some trading season or maybe creates something, you know, like Do Kwon with Luna, like all these people who are heliocentric figures, whether they're founders, whether they're traders, they all have their seasons and they never really last for any longer than, you know, a very brief period of time. I mean, the clips of Saylor's fraud are virtually endless. This is another clip that was taken at BTC Prague recently.
Right? I mean, that's the engineering. I give you the upside, you have no downside, and I pay you a dividend while you wait to get rich. Okay?
I mean, is this really the kind of person you want to be cheerleading the price? I mean, this is clearly another instance of a lie. Meanwhile, STRC is depegged by almost 25% as we speak, and it keeps going down. Like, I don't know how many times it takes for people to realize that these are not your heroes, right? Leopold is not your hero, Saylor's not your hero, Do Kwon is not your hero. None of these people are your heroes. You're going to have to build your own systems based on your own risk tolerances, your understanding of asymmetry, your own trading goals, your time frames, your availability to trade, all of these different factors. You're going to have to build your own systems and understand the exact risk you are taking and try to aim for convexity, which is why I've been stressing, you know, since the beginning, right? Always understand how to create systems, right? Which is why I've been very public with my trading system, which involves making as few assumptions as possible and making as objective criteria as possible within trading, involving market structure, involving support and resistance levels, so stuff like that where it's extremely clear what your assumptions are and you try to remain as objective as possible and as malleable as possible, adapting through every single market cycle such that you can trade any asset any direction. But unfortunately, right, people like Michael Saylor are trying to convince you to hold on to your Bitcoin even though they're making the biggest Ponzi ever. And the hilarious thing is that Saylor didn't even create this himself earlier or with the advice of any experts. He literally used fucking ChatGPT, which is the funniest part of this.
It's stretch. You know, I designed all these with AI. You know, I couldn't have done it myself. I literally sat and I used artificial intelligence and I went back and forth with the AI for a few hours. And
so you were just on ChatGPT, just like the rest of us, figuring out how to design these different offerings.
And arguing with it and saying, can I do this? Can I?
Okay, that is insane. How he created a multi-billion-dollar Ponzi just using ChatGPT like the rest of us. And this is the crazy thing is that now that Strategy, right, they have this overhang with the amount of Bitcoin they have. And if you go to strategy.com, actually, their MNAV is quite low. So if you look at this, their MNAV is literally at 1.01. And so what does this mean, right? As I've covered in the previous video, their MNAV has to be at a premium in order for them to raise accretive funding to buy more Bitcoin. So they raised this funding to actually buy Bitcoin and to pay the yield dividends. But this only happens when their stock is trading at a premium to the Bitcoin holdings. But it's not. It's literally trading at NAV, which is a big problem because they can no longer raise accretive funding. They will have to dilute their MSTR shareholders in order to raise more money. And look at this. Okay, their 1-year return is literally minus 78%. And I think as we speak, the pre-market is opening up, and I believe that MicroStrategy is actually trading at continues to trade below $85. And this is something that I actually shorted not too long ago because I believe that we are now breaking below one of the biggest levels in the chart. So this level at $100, both the psychological level and if you see on the high time frame chart, this is a very, very big level. So this is something that I shorted not too long ago, actually. This was maybe a few days ago, a couple days ago, actually, where I mentioned that MSTR is breaching below this high time frame level at $100. And if it breaks, then it's going to absolute Hades. And this is something I ended up shorting a couple days ago. And it indeed played out, right? Of course, we got this market structure right during New York Open, right? We got this breach below $100. Like I've mentioned many times before, New York Open continues to be the best time to be available on online for these kinds of setups. So as soon as the session started, right, we got this big move down, and this is something I shorted right around here, and we got this big move down the next day as well, and now we're trading at around 15% below. And I think that there's a long way down, right? There's a big inefficiency to be filled, right? There's pretty much air below this level. I think like pretty much the next, relevant level is maybe around $70-ish, but possibly much, much lower, maybe closer to like 45, right? This is the next significant level right here, right? Maybe around $45-ish, somewhere around here. And then, like below that, I mean, it's like maybe 20, 15, 20-ish dollars. So this is going to absolute hell as long as, this sailor sort of, overhang continues to happen. And I do believe that shorting MSTR is the best expression of being able to get exposure to this, sailor unwinding / crypto unwinding. And the reason why is because, of course, they're going to have to continue to dilute their shareholders and sell these shares in order to raise more creative funding to either purchase Bitcoin or to pay their, their yield dividends. And so you can see this is a big Ponzi where they're ultimately, trying to raise funding by selling these shares of MSTR to buy more Bitcoin. But of course, they also have to pay the yield dividends for STRC. And so all of these are kind of correlated because, right, they have to actually, raise funding through selling this asset. But unfortunately, MSTR is actually kind of a levered Bitcoin. And anytime that Bitcoin itself, the price falls, then MSTR prices fall. And then they can no longer raise accretive funding in order to, support their yield dividends, which is why literally everything is going down as a result. This is a huge Ponzi, right? If you guys can tell, this is a very cyclical Ponzi that is a classic example of one that eventually falls apart. And, with this developing, right, Bitcoin has started to breach below 60K. And this looks pretty catastrophic. Like, if this level breaks, I think it's pretty clear that we actually might see a move down, right, a capitulation move down all the way to maybe around 49-ish K right here. Maybe we get a small bounce there, but we'll see. And if this level breaks, I mean, God, like there's nothing below. I mean, I think the next level is probably around 25K. So yeah, I mean, obviously this has yet to be seen, and maybe this might happen if Saylor sells a significant amount of Bitcoin. But of course, he might have to because unfortunately, right, he has no other options. He has no other options because he can no longer raise accretive funding because the MNAV of MSTR is actually not in premium. And so the only other option he has to pay the yield dividends of STRC is to sell the Bitcoin. And if he sells the Bitcoin, of course, this is going to come crashing down. I mean, obviously, this has been priced, in a little bit given the move down right after he sold his Bitcoin right around here. But of course, right, this is not fully priced in. And I think when he sells, billions of dollars in Bitcoin eventually, this is just going to nuke. And so that's what I'm preparing for. That's what I've been shorting for. And I think there's no point in holding any crypto until there's some resolution to this, Sailor Ponzi scheme. But even then, right, there's very, very little reason to be holding crypto, as there's no catalyst left. All the institutions have already bought, and of course, right, there's all the quantum risk and many other different asset classes that you can invest in. So of course, like I said, have been investing in companies like SanDisk, Micron, stuff like that. And I think those are the ones that you actually want to be continuing to invest in, alongside private companies. Like I've given opportunities for my Discord community to invest in companies like Prometheus. And I think those are by far the best opportunities to invest in, rather than any of the other alternatives in these sort of private markets. Of course, like I've given opportunities in AMI Labs, and many other sort of AI companies like that. So of course, if you want to join these opportunities in the private markets in top leading companies, feel free to join. The link is in my bio. And also in this community, we have people who have made millions of dollars over the past 2 months in public markets. So we not only share, private market deal flow for other accredited investors, but also share the alpha around systems and trend-based trading within public markets that allows someone to turn, $50K into $3 million in like 2 months. And this is, of course, based on writing trends in the markets that emerge in any asset class, whether it's gold and silver, whether it's in oil, whether it's in AI stocks, whatever it is, or even short in crypto, whatever it is, we're going to be writing those trends as they play out. And of course, if you guys found value in this video, would love if you guys left a repost and a comment, and I'll see you guys in the next one.